He's also a motivational speaker and a TED Talks star, one of the most widely viewed TED Talks speakers, and he's also a best-selling author, and his family escaped polygamy, so he has a lot to talk about. But today, we're honored to have Liz Shropshire. She's the founder of the Shropshire Music Foundation, which has brought free musical instruments and music classes to more than 18,000 war-impacted children in some of the world's fiercest conflict zones, including Kosovo, Uganda, Northern Ireland, and the Syrian refugee camps in Greece. After receiving a graduate degree from the University of Southern California and working in music education for many years, Liz dropped everything and moved to a refugee camp in Kosovo, where she developed innovative programs using music to redress war trauma in children and teenagers. Using classes taught by trained volunteers, the Shropshire Music Foundation continues to expand, helping children and youth in conflict zones build leadership, peacemaking skills, and resilience to extremism through grassroots music education. We're so honored to have Liz with us. Please help me welcome Liz Shropshire.
Hello, I'm Liz. I'm actually a composer. I went to BYU for my undergrad, and then I went to USC to be a film composer. And I worked in the movie industry for a little while, became incredibly rich and famous, bought a house out in Malibu. No, I'm just kidding about that part. But I worked in that industry for a little while, and it just didn't really feel right to me. It felt just like it wasn't a very good fit. So I started teaching, and I was just looking for something that I could do that would have a bigger impact on the world. Is it possible to dim the lights up here some more? Then 20 years ago, I was driving to the home of one of my piano students, listening to NPR, and they were talking about the refugee crisis that was going on in Kosovo. And at the time, Serbs were going into the villages of Kosovo, Serbian policemen, military, just people, and they were forcing the Albanians out. The Albanians were forced to go and to leave and to walk to neighboring countries. They ended up in these neighboring countries, and they were living in refugee camps. And the conditions in the camps were really awful. There wasn't enough food or water. Things were just really, really terrible. But the worst thing was that there was no communication. And men and women had been separated from each other, many of the men killed, many of the men taken to prison. And so these women who were living in these refugee camps didn't know what had happened to the men in their lives, their husbands, their fathers, and also their sons. And that was the most traumatic thing that they were talking about in this radio interview. And I thought, I was actually planning a trip to Europe that summer anyway. I thought instead of just going on vacation for myself, I'll go help out for a few weeks. Well, I was driving to the home of one of my piano students when I heard this report, and when I got there, they had a nanny who was from Europe, so I asked her, I said, do you know where Kosovo is? I know it's in Europe, but that's pretty much all that I know. So we talked about it a little bit, and then I went home that night. I found a volunteer group online called the Balkan Sunflowers. I'd never heard of them before. They were based in Germany. I hoped that they were real. I applied to be a volunteer, and the way that it worked is that you paid your way to get to the country, and then you gave them some money to help cover your expenses, and then you lived with them and did whatever they were doing, and they were working with the children in Kosovo. So they accepted me as a volunteer, and when I went back to that same piano student the next week, the nanny said, are you going to Kosovo? And I said, yes, I found this group. I'm going to go. I'm leaving in 2 months. I'm just going to be getting everything ready between now and then. She said, well, my husband and I want to give you some money to help you pay for this. Now, this was a nanny. This wasn't the wealthy family that employed her. And I said, no, that's not what this is about. I'm not taking money from anyone. I'm just doing this instead of going on vacation for myself. And she said, no, Liz, you don't understand. My husband and I have been talking about this all week, and we want to go too, but we can't go, so let us give you some money so it's as if we're going with you. I said, let me think about that, because it was totally different from what I was planning. I went home, I was talking to my next door neighbor, who I'd known forever, and I just said, I don't know what to do. I don't want to take money from anyone. And she said, Liz, don't be stupid. Don't just go to go. Do what you do best and take a music program to those kids. So my friends and I started contacting instrument manufacturers, and donations, and I ended up going with about $5,000 worth of musical instruments. And the instruments that I chose to take were the Irish penny whistle and the harmonica. And the reason I chose these instruments is because, first of all, they're extremely easy to play. Anyone can play these instruments. But secondly, they were small. These kids had had everything stolen from them while they were walking between countries. I knew at some point they were going to walk to another country or get to go home. And I wanted them to have something small enough that they could put it in their pocket and hide it, and no one would be able to see it. Well, I went to Kosovo. I went in August, and the war ended actually in July, so everyone headed back to Kosovo. As the refugees returned to Kosovo, they found that everything was destroyed, absolutely everything. You couldn't look around like this without just seeing utter destruction. The homes, the churches, the mosques, the roads, the hospitals, the schools, everything was destroyed. And so most people ended up living in a camp when they came back home. Now, if you live in a camp in another country, it's called a refugee camp. If you live in a camp inside your own country, it's called an IDP camp, or internally displaced person camp. And these are just buildings that are still standing after a war or after a natural disaster. And in Kosovo, they moved into the schools, into the churches, the mosques, into the factories. And this first camp that I went to was actually a factory. It was a brick factory. And in this camp, there were living about 350 people. Only 3 were women. Only 3 were men. The rest were women and children. And the women were living in this state of intense trauma. There had been over 40,000 rapes in this war. Most of them were gang rapes. There were women who couldn't talk. There was one woman who would just rock back and forth all the time. The women just stayed together and tried to help each other through this experience. But there were hundreds of children in this camp, and no one was doing anything with them. And there were weapons everywhere. There were real guns. They were making weapons out of everything. They had all seen for the last 10 years of their life, which was their entire life for most of these children, that weapons were the only way that you could have any kind of control or power in your life. So they were playing with these guns, reenacting executions, all kinds of things. So the first day I went into the camp, I took a volleyball, and I started playing games with the kids, and pretty soon they started fighting. And so I grabbed the volleyball, and I said, "Now stop fighting, or I'm going to take my ball and go home." Of course, I'm speaking English, and they speak Albanian, so I don't really know what they thought I was saying. So then we did this for about 10 more minutes, and then I'd grab the ball again, and I'd say, "Stop fighting, or I'm going to take my ball and go home." We kept doing this for about an hour. And then I finally said, "Okay, I'm going to go home, come back tomorrow, see if we can go longer without you trying to kill each other." Well, as I went to leave, one of the women in the camp came out and grabbed my hand, and she walked me around the camp to show me where they were living. She showed me this huge pile of garbage, taller than this, well, maybe not taller than this ceiling, but pretty tall. She showed me their outdoor toilet and their one spigot of water for 350 people. And then she took me back to a room where all these women in the camp had gathered, watching me, wondering what on earth this lady was doing out there playing with their kids. Well, the women pretty much ended up adopting me. They taught me what it was like to be Kosovar, what it was like to have lived through this awful war. And they helped me as I started working with these children. I started classes with the boys and the girls. And this camp, this place that had become so full of sadness, that was just quiet except for very awful sounds, became this place with all this life and all this joy. Now, it wasn't necessarily beautiful. Our penny whistles are in the key of D, and our harmonicas are in the key of C. So when they're being played at the same time, it kind of sounds like this. But the kids were singing, and they were playing. We had classes 6 days a week, and it was absolutely amazing. Now, the kids that weren't living in the camps, they were living maybe in a tent in their backyard while their family rebuilt their home. And these kids, they all gathered in one school that hadn't been destroyed. There were thousands of children there, and they were sitting around smoking and getting in fights. And so the first day I went, I found a group of kids standing off to the side, and I said, "Would you like to have a music class?" And they said, "Sure." So I had 9 children in that class. That was Monday. By Friday, I had over 90 children in that class. I was supposed to stay for 3 weeks. I stayed for 6, and by the end of the 6 weeks, I was teaching 5 classes a day, 6 days a week in the school, and 4 classes a day, 6 days a week in the camp. And every day more children came. Every single day. I ran out of instruments. I had hundreds of instruments, and I ran out of instruments, and still the children kept coming, saying, we just want to be in your class. I would have mothers come to me and say, please let my son be in your class because my nephew has finally stopped screaming at night, and this is the only thing that's helped him. Well, at the end of the 6 weeks, my job's back in LA. They were saying, we love what you're doing, but if you don't come back, we're going to fire you. And I'd run out of all my money. I'd spent all my savings for this. I'd maxed out my credit cards. This was just supposed to be a short trip. So I had to get back to LA. But when I went to tell the children this, they all started crying. Now, I'd seen these kids, as I said, I'd seen them reenact executions. I'd seen children attack adults. I'd seen so much violence and fear and hatred in these children. But I'd never seen them cry until I told them I was leaving. And they said, Liz, you can't go. You can't take this away from us. They said, there are groups here that are rebuilding our homes, groups that are giving us food, and we're so grateful for that. But this is the only thing for us, and you can't take it away. I said, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I promise you I will come back. So I left my stuff in Kosovo, went back to Los Angeles. I was speaking to one of the groups that helped raise money for the trip, and at the end of my speech, I just said, I got to get back to these kids, but I don't know how. And so when I finished, a woman approached me and said, Liz, I'm an accountant. If you want to start a nonprofit foundation, I'll be your accountant. And another woman offered to be the lawyer, and they went off and formed the Shropshire Music Foundation, and we've been around ever since then. Now, the effects of war on children, obviously, it's awful. They lose family members, they lose limbs. Horrible things happen in war, but something happened about 30 years ago that changed the face of warfare in our world. Children went from being victims of war to being targets in war, and this is a huge distinction. It used to be that children were victimized in war. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time, or you lose your family, you lose your home. But about 30 years ago, children started becoming targets. And they're targets because the majority of wars in our world now are civil wars, where one group of people has decided that they're better than another group of people. And when you decide this, it doesn't matter whether you use religion or ethnicity or the length of your nose. It doesn't matter what metric you use. When you hate another group of people enough that you want to annihilate them, you want to kill the children as well. And so children have started, well, they did start becoming targets of war, and now they're being targeted all over our world. Child soldiering is also a huge problem, where children as young as 5 years old are kidnapped and forced to become child soldiers. It's really horrific. And if you talk to the majority of mothers from Syria and ask them why they became refugees, they will tell you it's because their children were being targeted, and the only way that they could hope to keep any of their children alive was to leave and become refugees. That's our world today. Now, for the child themselves, these children, the war ends, and all that they've known is violence, all that they've known is fear. And when the war goes away, that stays with them. And if we don't do something for these children, then everything that they do for the rest of their lives is shaped by this hatred and this fear. And it's like they're in prison for the rest of their lives. Everything that they do, everything that they see is based on these emotions. So what our program does is we go in and we give the kids something, not just an activity to come to, but something that can actually change their lives. When they come to these classes, our instruments are free, our classes are free, and it's not just an activity that they come to and participate in and go home, but we actually give them this instrument. It's theirs forever, even if they stop taking the class. And we give them homework. And the next day they come back and they have to play their homework for us. And the next day they come back and they have to play their homework for us. And every day that they do that, they get better. And every day that they do that, they realize that they might not be able to control any of these other things in their lives, but they can control whether they're going to learn to play this instrument. And it's absolutely amazing the change that happens. The biggest comment that I have gotten back from our children is that they used to be angry, but they're not angry anymore after they've been in our program. And that's really huge. Now, for teenagers, the effects of war are different. When you're a teenager is when you're deciding the kind of person you're going to be, and you do it by making choices that maybe your parents don't like. And some of these choices are good, some of them are stupid. It's just part of being a teenager. But if you're a teenager living in a war zone and you make a bad choice, your family can get killed, or you could lose your home, or your father can be taken off and tortured. And so what happens is, as a teenager living in a war zone, you stop trying. You decide it's better if you just don't keep trying, because nothing that you do is making things better. Then the war ends, and you still don't believe that you can do anything with your life. We have teenagers and children all over the world right now who are being recruited to be suicide bombers and fighters for extremist groups. These aren't kids that want to be bad people. These aren't kids that are bad people. But they're children that have been exposed to so much that is so toxic to their soul that they honestly believe that they're not worth anything. They believe that they can do more good in 15 minutes as a suicide bomber than they can do by living out the rest of their lives. Just think for a minute, what would it take for you to believe that about yourself? That your life was so meaningless that it would be more valuable if you blew yourself up to kill other people. That's happening right now in our world, and our number one mission with children is for these children to realize who they are, how amazing they are, and that they have the choice of how they want to live their lives and the kind of people that they want to be. Now, when I first went to Kosovo, as I said, I didn't speak the language. And when I had these classes of 200 children, I honestly didn't know if they were coming to learn music or if they were just coming to watch an American make a total fool out of herself, trying to teach without speaking their language. And I did make a total fool out of myself. I'd jump up and down and clap and write on this chalkboard that you could only write every other inch because it was destroyed and had bullet holes in it. And after about a week, a 12-year-old girl in the class came up to me and said, "Liz, would you like me to translate for you? I speak some English." And I said, "Yes, please come translate for me." So she started translating, and she translated all my classes that summer. Well, the next summer I went back, and she said, "Liz, I'd like to translate for you again." And I said, "Well, instead of translating for me, why don't you let me teach you how to teach? And then we can both teach, we'll reach more children." Well, then her friends started coming, and their friends started coming, and now our program in Kosovo is completely run by teenagers. These kids are amazing. Every teenager you see in this picture lost at least one family member in the war. Most of them also lost their home. Some of them, when this picture was taken a few years ago, were still living in camps because they still didn't have a home. But every one of them decided that they want to use their spare time to help the children to heal so that they won't have to go through what these teenagers have gone through. And they're amazing. When I watch these teenagers teach, sometimes I can't help myself and I start crying because they are so amazing. And they don't only teach, they come to training, they teach each other. The new volunteers are taught by the older volunteers. They send me reports. These kids are absolutely amazing. And they are the Shropshire Music Foundation in Kosovo. It's not me anymore. It's them. And because of them, I was able to take our program to other countries. And the first country that I went to was Northern Ireland. And most people think of Northern Ireland as a vacation destination, but it's actually a pretty violent place. Oh, sorry, this is Kosovo. This is just a few pictures of some of the things that our children are doing there, my teenagers are doing with the children. We do programs with minority communities, we do programs in villages, and we do programs in the city where we live. And it's just amazing. Now in Northern Ireland, 95% of the population is segregated between Catholic and Protestant. And that means that if you're Catholic and you have to walk through a Protestant neighborhood to get home, you're going to get beat up a lot of the time. These lovely murals are on homes and businesses and apartment buildings that the children walk by every single day. They're everywhere. And if you ask the kids, they will tell you they scare them. They don't get immune to it. In addition to that, There are bombs pretty much every week in Northern Ireland. Bombs are so common in Northern Ireland that every time one gets announced, no joke, I live with a local family when I'm there, every time they announce one on the radio or the TV, the people I live with say, that means traffic's going to be terrible now. It's just common. The first year that I was there, they had these commercials that said, please don't attack the firemen because you might need them. And they finally pulled the ad campaign because it wasn't doing any good. They actually, when the kids get bored, they will start a fire so the firemen will come and they can attack them. There's nothing really for most of the kids to do there, and so they turn to this violence, this segregation violence. In addition to that, there are riots about once a month, and it makes it really, really hard for us to do our program, because what we do is we do programs where we bring the Catholic and the Protestant children together for classes and for concerts. And it's pretty amazing what happens. When they first come in the class, the Catholic and the Protestant kids sit separate from each other. Within a few classes, they start coming closer to each other. Within a couple of weeks, they're talking and hanging out. After a month or so, they're having sleepovers. It's absolutely amazing what happens when these kids get to know each other in their own home environment and realize that they have way more in common than they have that's different. This is our hardest program. This one doesn't run when I'm not there. It gets disrupted by riots. It gets disrupted by bombs. It's like I said, really difficult, but I still have great hope for this program. Now, the next country that we went to is northern Uganda. Uganda is sort of like two countries. The south is relatively prosperous, but the north is incredibly impoverished because of a civil war that went on for about 23 years, where a man named Joseph Kony set himself up as this spiritual leader and said that he was going to conquer the Ugandan government and replace the government with one run by the Ten Commandments, which would seem like he might be a good guy, but it doesn't really seem like he'd be a good guy doing that. But anyway, he's a very evil man, and no one would join his army, so he kidnapped children. 80% of his army was made up of children between the ages of 5 and 12. A few years ago, the war was drawing to its end in Uganda. It's still going on, but it's outside of Uganda now. And we thought all of these children were going to come back from being child soldiers. And there were all these programs being put in place. Everyone was so excited that these thousands of children were finally going to come home, and only a few hundred came home. No one knows where the rest of them are. Most of them are probably not alive anymore. These kids have all lost not only their childhood, but they've also lost any opportunities for education. And when they get out, when they escape or they're found, no one wants anything to do with them because of the horrible things that they've done, even though they weren't their choice, even though none of them would have chosen this life. And so we do programs with these former child soldiers, helping them to not only learn music, but learn literacy and learn English, which they need because English is the official language of Uganda, and if you don't go to school, you don't get to learn English. Trying to help these kids to be able to realize that they can be peaceful again and that they can be leaders in their communities. These are our youth volunteers in Uganda. Some of these youth volunteers were child soldiers. Some of them were living in camps when this picture was taken. All of them, like our kids in Kosovo, decided that they want to spend their spare time helping the children. And it's really amazing. This is probably my favorite picture that I have. It's really funny. When I go into a country, a lot of kids will come to the first classes because they want to see an American or they want to see a white person. What happens when the teenagers take over in every country is that everything changes in our program, because it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter your religion, your ethnicity. Teenagers are cool everywhere, all over the world. And when the teenagers take over, the kids sense a difference. Because these are teenagers who aren't being paid. These are teenagers whose parents didn't say, go take care of your little sister. These are teenagers who chose to spend their free time preparing so that they could go and teach these kids. And they are absolutely amazing. Look at this picture. You can see the main thing that our teenagers are taught in their training is to love the children and to respect the children so that they can realize how amazing they are. And look at these teenagers. Can you see? You can see the love on their faces that they have for these children. They're absolutely amazing. And our teenagers, And some of our teenagers now have become adults. They're still running our program in Uganda, and that one does run year-round. What I want to show you now is just an excerpt from a video that we have on our website that shows our program in all 3 countries with the kids talking about it.
I was 3 years old when the war started in Kosovo, but the worst experiences were when I was 11 years old. As a kid, it's really hard to see people dead on the streets. There were many cases when we were attacked by the police in our houses for no reason. We were so frightened to the point where we were shaking so much, you were so cold, and all you wanted is to be close to your parents. And most of the time that was impossible because the men of the house always had to run away from the police because they were usually the target and they would be killed. And there were about 40 people in that house, in my uncle's house, that were living there, kids, children, and women and men. So the second time when the men left and the police came back, they jumped the wall and started shooting uncontrollably to the walls and everything they saw in front of them. So I was left alone, 11 years old, with my 9-year-old sister and my 3-year-old brother. I remember at one point the gunshots got so loud and so close together. All I remember is my sister screaming. We lost both mom and dad because none of them were close to us. And I remember my brother jumping on me, and I had to be, as an 11-year-old kid, I had to be their parent at that moment until my mom came back. My mom was fine, but my dad was shot, and the same day my uncle got killed.
When I was 7 to 8 years old, I was abducted by rebels. We were forced to go and kill some man whom we stayed together with them.
I cried a lot because I did not want to go. I was forced to go. So it was so horrible. We started to walk. We walked for about 6 hours, carrying heavy stuff on our heads. And it was hurting so badly, but there was nothing we could do. It was like 100 years, my whole life, in that kind of life. It was so bad.
traumas as well as many kids, as I did not express myself or show my emotions very much. The penny whistle that I got from Liz was my way of dealing with those traumas. Liz came the second year from America. She saw my penny whistle and it was all beat up, and she asked me, she said, "What happened to it? Did you beat your brother up with it?" And I said, "No, Liz," I said, "I played it a lot every time I was sad, and every time I was sad, penny whistle would help me."
So this program actually it helped me a lot. Since I came back from the bush, you know, such kind of bad dreams I'm now not getting, because when I started to, you know, thinking about what past, just pick ukulele and other penny whistle, I started to play it, and those kind of dreams or thinking, bad thinking, whatever, just disappear.
So you can watch the rest of that on our website if you'd like to, but I'd like to talk about what we're doing right now. We started a program last fall in Greece working with the refugees. Right now in Greece there are somewhere between 60 and 80,000 refugees. These are refugees from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and now many African countries, including Eritrea and Congo. You don't become a refugee if you have any other option. And anyone who tells you different, just don't believe them, because it's not true. Greece was the gateway into Europe, and so refugees were coming into Greece, getting registered as refugees there, and then they were able to walk into the rest of Europe. But then a year ago, there was a border put up and a law made that they could not go past Greece. And so now you've got thousands of refugees who are stuck in Greece, waiting in limbo, hoping that their case is considered dire enough that they'll be allowed to go on to Europe. And what I want to show you this video is, I apologize, all of our videos are a bit, very low budget. We're a very shoestring organization. But this is one of the groups of refugees that I work with. They're called the Yazidis, and these people are persecuted because of their religion. It's a very ancient religion. They are ISIS's #1 target. And ISIS does not want to only defeat them, they want to wipe them off the earth. And these refugees who are in Greece are some of the only survivors of the Yazidi genocide. And so this just shows you a little bit about what it's like to become a refugee and how you do it.
We had a life that was all our own, a beautiful life that you'll never know, a home that was taken from under our heads, home that we hope will be ours again.
از أول خير هاتنا تتكم سر جابا هاتي وبخير هاتي يعني وقت تما هو سوريني وقال كارثات هات السريمة استيمها هشت سنة 2014 يعني أو دهي بندورا ما توقع عندي بوج 11 وإيفارا كلمة بدن إيفارا يكشمي المدان سعد الدوني في شفي المدان هتانا كي هفتي سبه يعني سلاحقنا ما المنا شغل عندن وهتانا كي زلامن ما شركرين البرساترا وهتاني كيما بازدا إيه كاري بازدا إيه نكاري بازدا بيرو كالما ابن مالدما كشتن
خشك كم جو داعش هاتا مالاما جو داعش قوم تشتكي بناكن جو كاس لاحد خو بدنا ما هاد شونا مالا وانا بخدك جو بس لاحد بدنا ما جو خشك ما وداك ما قوم تشتكي بناكن آخر سلاحد وان برنش مالا وان دركتن مالا وان القصبو دركتنش مش مالا وان آمنين مالينا هاتن إن ما دركتن طرام بيلت خو دركتن دابرو تشيتشن ديسا داعش هات وقريا داعش هاتن تا القنتاغات رابون قرتن همو قرتن معلاوان بيبا بينش عائلة أبو بيجم عائلة وان همو هانا قرتن يعني خوش كام تشار محل دستي وان داما أم قلت آخرين داك أم زيدا أو بو ريجا خوش كام وسهانا قرتن
رجعان خود زنارا وان وارد كيرن بس ما نافين بكافين دستي في داعشيدا وقال لك أخذ دستي وان دا كشتن قال كاف داري خو خطت كيرن تمرن وخش كام الدليل بالبو مش سوري ام مستوي متون سوري ما ادري ما مربن ما ادري مربنو ومنا كفن دستي وانده وخلاص
كلاميرو بيرجني مال دا كشتن وزارو كان ماستر جيكرين وكلاندن والبرداي كيوان كرين داعش البرداي كيوان كرين وخورتد ما دستي وانش بشت فشداندن وستري وان بساتورا جيكرين ستري وان بساتورا جيكرين وكچكن ما 14 سالي كچكن ما 9 سالي الزلامه 5 سالي مهر كرن بداري زوري وكچكن ما يعني كچكوك بون بزور فروت
Lisa, look in the camp. No anyone in the camp, everybody leaving. Just me and Ramji. Maybe tomorrow me too leave. Yeah, maybe. Take an Elise, I miss you so much.
Hi, my name is Rana. I am 13 years old. Before I don't know anything for music. Now I know later. Lisa, my teacher for music. I am so happy when I teach children. Children make me happy.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And will I teach our children? I am so happy. And the children, every children, I think I know music, a harmonica, yeah.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy.
So that's just a little taste of our program in Greece and the refugees that we work with there. These are some more pictures of the camp that the people ended up living with after surviving the genocide. There are thousands of Yazidi women and girls, mostly girls, still in captivity. They're sold into sexual slavery, and no one knows where they are, and it's horrific for these girls as well as for their families. The Yazidis are amazing people. They're really phenomenal, and they're one of the 2 camps that I work in Greece, or that we have our programs in, and they have become youth volunteers in a very short period of time. They're just some of the most amazing, peaceful, giving people that I've ever known in my entire life. So anyone who tells you that refugees are looking for an easy way out, or that we don't need to help them because we have our own problems, I hope you'll remember this, because this is not the kind of problems that we have in America. We could do something about this problem. These teenagers that I teach, what's really unique about us is that in all of our countries, the goal is for all of our programs to be run by local teenagers. And teenagers who felt for so long that nothing that they did mattered, that they couldn't make a difference in the world, now they know that what they do matters. and they know that they can make a difference in the world. We've been in Kosovo for 20 years. Our kids have become engineers and teachers and politicians, hopefully good ones. They're changing the face of their country, and it's beautiful to see what's happening. It's just a little music program, but it's the thing I could do. So my challenge for you, for all of you, is to look and see what is it that you can do. For some of you, it'll be to go to another country and do something like I did. For some of you, it will be to get involved with us and work in our programs. For some of you, it'll be to do something right here, right now, or back at home in your home country or your home community. But do something, because our world desperately needs you. Things are not getting better, as you know. And your generation, you guys could change everything. One of the most amazing things that's happening in Greece is that there are volunteers from all over the world who've come to volunteer to help the refugees. And a program that we started last fall for the first time ever is actually training these volunteers from other countries to teach our music program, and then we give them the instruments, and they go out and teach in their camps and shelters with the homeless refugees as well. It's your generation. You can do it. I promise you, you can do it. You can do way more than you ever thought you could. Get the best education that you can right now. And then use that education, whether it's to actually work in your field or do something completely different. Use the amazing gift of being in America right now to change things, to make things better. Because you can, and we need you. We really do. Do you have any questions for me? I know we're about out of time. Well, I just want to say thanks for having me here. You can reach me on our website. It's teachingchildrenpeace.org. This is a quote that I really like, and this one. I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do. So feel free to get in touch with me if you'd like. We're a complete volunteer-based organization, and I'll also help you if you want to do something on your own. But let's do something. Let's make a difference in the world, because they need us. Thanks. There are a few things you can pick up outside about us if you'd like. There's an email list you can sign up for.